Rachel, talk to me about having something bigger to work towards, a deeper purpose, something bigger than the self.
Yeah, the importance of that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, when we have either a cause to work for or a deep source of intrinsic motivation for what we're doing, we can apply this to the gym. The gym is a place where we go to embrace discomfort and embrace hardship. When we have a deeper cause to work for or a higher reason to be getting uncomfortable and sticking through something uncomfortable, we're much more likely to see it to the end. And we're much more likely to, as we kind of just talked about, be able to turn on the afterburners at the end of a workout
Mm.
when things are feeling really uncomfortable.
Yeah, so some symptoms of not having a deep enough why or a deep enough purpose behind what we're doing can be that we kind of our consistency fades, and we may be in nutrition. Maybe we're so driven by extrinsic drivers and extrinsic motivation. Like I want to look a
Yeah.
certain way to other people, as opposed
Yep.
to I want to do this for myself, and this is inherently meaningful. That can be a problem. So you notice the consistency would drop away there.
Yes.
Mobility, it would happen as well. Maybe even training or doing mobility. Yeah, mobility is part of that. There's loads of different ways that we can see consistency fading when we don't
Oh,
have
yeah.
that deeper drive.
Even things like sleep habits and other recovery
Yes.
habits. You're not going to stick to a sleep routine if it's only to achieve an outcome. Because what happens is we see a setback towards that outcome and we lose motivation to keep trying. We don't want to experiment. We see failure.
Yes, exactly right. I've been having an interesting time. Just got for Christmas and birthday, got a new Garmin watch, and the sleep tracking on
Nice.
that is legit. And sleep
Legit.
is something that I'm really trying to work on
Nice.
this year. These kind of physical aspects of mindset. So
Mm.
it's been really interesting to see how easy it becomes to gamify this and work for the number as opposed to the
Mhm.
feeling and the mentality that I'm trying to get from it. But the what actually drives you is obviously how do I want to feel the day after, or that's what actually drives me.
That's right.
Like it's like, well, how do I want to feel the day after? Like,
Yeah.
do I want to feel like I've taken a step towards who I want to be, or do I want to feel like I've kind of flowed through the day without really making an impact? So that's finding a deeper purpose within that.
Mm, your tie to numbers has so much application, not only to recovery stuff like using a Whoop, but also to chasing numbers on a leaderboard
Mm.
or chasing numbers on a scale, like you talked about with nutrition. Anytime we notice a dip in the numbers, or we experience any type of setback, having that external focus becomes such a demotivator instead of an invitation to learn.
Mm. Yeah, I found the gamification aspect, or the kind of the ability to put numbers on my progress is
Yeah.
useful because it
Yeah.
indicates the effectiveness of the process things that I've been following. So blue light's been the big one. I've recently got this
Mm.
they call it K safe, a kitchen safe, and it's this timer lock and a little box, little clear plastic box that you can put your phone in or put anything in, and then program in how long that you don't want to touch it for. And there's no way of getting in it until the timer's run out. I've been using that, and that's been a big a big help for me. It's like I only have to only have to use willpower once to put my phone in there, as opposed to every
Yeah.
few seconds not check my phone. But anyway, I'm
Mm.
getting distracted. What else is what else is a signal that we may not have a deeper why or a deeper purpose or something bigger than ourselves to work towards?
Mm. I think the chaser mindset model is a classic presentation of this, and that's when we work on something for a short amount of time and then we switch programs, either because we get bored with it, or because we see someone having success with something else. So comparisons are another piece of this. We're always comparing ourselves to other people. That impacts progress in many, many ways. And
Mm.
so that chaser mindset model is always looking for like the next thing. It's always looking for novelty. What's my next? How can I be doing more versus doing what's hard better?
Yeah, we often describe it as the puppy dog model. It's like, I'm excited, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to get to the
Yeah.
next stage.
Yes.
I'm going to ignore the
Hmm.
kind of fundamentals that I know I should be doing now and go towards like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm excited, I'm going towards this. I'll do snatches every day, or I'll
Hmm.
do room muscle ups every day, as opposed to the
For
like
2 weeks.
foundational work. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then move on to the next thing, and then move on to
Yes.
obstacle course racing or whatever.
And then
Um,
and then be
yeah,
mad that we haven't made any progress.
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
And the reason why this topic is following on from Jason McCarthy's episode
Mhm.
is because he obviously had such a, a purpose behind everything that he was doing.
Mhm.
The Chad workout and the Chad movement, and the charitable effort behind that was a huge motivator for him. I know, and even the workout itself, and a hero workout itself, has a different meaning behind it, because
Yeah.
well, it touches you. It's got like, okay, well,
Yeah.
it puts your suffering into a relative place, and it makes you think,
Yes.
okay, this is there's something bigger than me behind this.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
great observation. It is the feeling behind a hero workout is different, and it's good for us to define that. It is because we can tie our suffering to a higher reason and put it in perspective.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
two quotes that actually, before I get into that, without establishing a why, what essentially happens, or without establishing a deeper purpose behind our training, something bigger to work towards, what essentially happens is we are able to coast but never commit to our
Mm.
ultimate goal and to our potential. We're always going to be wanting for a bit more, because we haven't taken on a heavy enough burden, or we haven't taken on a large enough
Mm.
burden, or something bigger than ourselves that kind of that
Mm.
pulls from you that potential.
What's coming to me right now is that that's a method of avoiding responsibility.
Go on, tell me more.
When when we don't have to commit to anything, when we're avoiding commitment to something because we're chasing, we're losing consistency. It's a way of us avoiding like responsibility for ourselves. This is just occurring
Mm.
to me. It's very fresh. What do you think?
No, it's, yeah, that's interesting. It's I suppose it would be, meaning is essentially an antidote to nihilism, and when we don't have
Mm.
something bigger than ourselves, we're often thinking, oh, what's the point? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
kind of, I'm out there for me, and this is it. Whereas seeing yourself as part of a community, or working for a cause bigger than yourself, can often bring out the best in you,
Mm.
and the cause that you truly believe in.
Yeah, that is 100% true. The ability to work with others, even in a CrossFit gym where you're not necessarily, your goal is to rise together, but we do
Mm.
that through exercising with each other.
Hmm.
That still is a shared future vision that we strive for together. And it is more meaningful to train with other people for that reason than it is to just train by ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely is. And
Yeah.
that entire community aspect, I think that's one of the reasons why CrossFit has risen to the level that it's at now. It's just like,
Yeah.
because of the shared suffering is huge, and the shared discomfort is massive in that.
Yes.
There's a couple of quotes, but there's actually three quotes that I was thinking of as I was prepping for this. The first is by or from Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist in in Auschwitz, actually, and he said, in some ways, so I should say, a Jewish psychiatrist in Auschwitz, and was like, he wrote the most incredible but haunting book, Man's Search for Meaning. And in that, he said, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. So he's talking there about, if you can sacrifice yourself for something bigger than yourself, um, then we have the potential to alleviate suffering, to kind of to
Mm.
diminish how difficult something is for ourselves in that
Yeah.
moment. So if there's
Well, that,
meaning behind a workout, or meaning behind your weight loss journey, or whatever it is, then you're going to find it a little bit easier.
yeah, I think many of the athletes that we work with, especially high level athletes, they often have a motivation to be an inspiration to other people. And it's
Mm.
easy to take that on and kind of look at it in a non-serving way. Like it's my job to be perfect so other people see me that way. But when they can tie in vulnerability and have the goal of showing people how difficult a journey to the
Mm.
top is, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely.
Mm.
And then there's Nietzsche, which is so closely the German philosopher Nietzsche said he has a why can bear almost anyhow, and that's almost rewritten by Frankl in his work. But this
Mm.
kind of existentialist view of the world, like we've we can find meaning in these difficult events, and they're often what we need to create that meaning too. And then there's one more that
Yes.
came to mind as well, which is Jordan Peterson. I can't remember which of his books this was in, but he said the purpose of life is to find the largest burden you can bear and bear it. So this idea of like we can add purpose, we can add meaning by taking on something bigger than ourselves and seeing just how far we can stretch this. And yes, finding out where the limit is within that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another purpose that I hear about from high level athletes as well is the act
Mm,
of seeing where their limits
absolutely.
are and truly
Yeah.
feeling like they're maximizing their potential.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
is. Um, so yeah, this search and meaning. It can, especially when we're talking about something that's when I'm bringing up philosophers that I'm assuming is kind of that aren't easily accessible or readily publicized. This can feel so disconnected from
Mm,
our everyday life as an athlete. So let's bring it into something a bit more relevant to us now, and maybe yeah, and let's discuss quickly intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation as well, because I think that's important to
sure.
get to. So Rachel, do you want to chat to us about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation?
I want to so badly. So, extrinsic motivation is when we are doing something in order to either receive a reward or avoid a punishment. So, we're doing it for an outcome. Intrinsic motivation is when the work we're doing is enjoyable in and of itself. The outcome doesn't matter as much. So, as an example, if I derive pleasure from painting,
Mhm.
then painting feels really good to me and I'm intrinsically motivated to do it, whether or not I manage to create a painting that's good or not. The act of painting is pleasurable. If, on the other hand, I hate painting, but I'm in an art class and I have to, present something to the teacher for a grade and I don't like doing the work, then I'm going to work hard at it, perhaps, but the work itself is for an external reward.
Mm. So the parallels to training become so clear here. If
Yeah.
you are in one of those gyms that tries to train you like your CrossFit Games athlete every single day, but you just don't care about that, then it's
Yeah.
going to feel like you're kind of focusing on extrinsic motivation, like what's my snatch, what's my
Yeah.
friend time, what's all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Any We know that we're extrinsically motivated by something when we're focused on outcome, and we have a tendency to tie outcomes to our worth. So if my worth is subconsciously tied to making the leaderboard for my Fran time, then the work I do to get there is only extrinsically motivated.
Mm.
If
Where
and I'm not going to enjoy it as much. It's going to feel like a chore. It's going to feel overwhelming. What's likely going to happen whenever I test Fran is I'm going to become very self-conscious and start overthinking and panicking, and then my performance suffers.
Yeah. Whereas if you are one of those people you just love, whereas if the focus is, I'm going to hang out with my mates, I'm going to have a great time, I'm going to
Yeah.
like push myself, find my limits, I'm going to enjoy this, I find the process, I don't know whether anyone's ever said this, but I find the process of doing Fran inherently valuable and enjoyable, then it's something to work towards.
Thrusters thrill me.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so good. The
Yeah.
best time.
I love feeling like I'm going to throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a way to train that. There's a way to train ourselves to derive enjoyment from that sense of accomplishment at the end of a workout. I think Dr. Lemke talked about it in one of our previous podcast episodes about dopamine. So
Mm,
we do get a dopamine hit from training. And so if anyone is listening to this and going, I actually like really love that, then you're not alone. And it is something that we can train ourselves to enjoy if we don't currently enjoy it.
absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I view this as part of the aiming up phase in the Mindset X
Yeah.
method. So obviously we have testing to begin with, figuring out where you are right now. This feeds into it quite nicely as well because of
Yeah.
identifying your own values and your purpose. But I see this as kind of sitting heavily in the next phase, aiming up, creating a vision, like aiming at what is going to drive you and pull you towards success. So
Mhm.
how do we make this applicable?
Yeah. Uh, Understanding like the true reason that we're training is really critical here.
Mm,
Because again, so often we start at the gym with an extrinsic motivator. It's most often I want to lose weight or like look better, or I want to, improve my resting heart rate, right? My doctor said that I'm going to have a heart attack. So attaching those extrinsic motivators to it makes it really difficult. If we can tie it to some sort of intrinsic motivation, answering the question, who am I becoming through taking on this hardship,
mhm.
then we find that authentic, deeper cause to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a story that I want to share about this athlete that I used to work with called Lee, and Lee was um, kind of I think a father of two. He was probably mid 30s when I was working with him. He was a decent level athlete, like pretty good, like would go to competitions, um, pushed pretty hard, was a fit guy. Um, and just really when I was starting out with this mindset work, and I was having this conversation with him where he was talking about his goals and his aspirations for the future, but he just couldn't make progress. He couldn't find the commitment. He couldn't work hard enough to get there. He couldn't find the intensity he desired, and he was kind of starting to lose confidence with this as well. What Lee and I discovered is that he had no why, he had no who that he wanted to become. He had no depth to his goals. When I asked him about his goals, they were hit, I can't remember how many kilos snatch, and it was a grace time in under this. And it's like, those in themselves aren't very motivating factors for him anyway. Like maybe they are for some people, but for him they meant nothing really, apart
Yeah.
from the way they look to outside people's. But it's on
Hmm.
investigation, we did a process that we now talk about as the 7 whys. And I asked him why, like over and over and over again in different ways. And it's like, okay, why do you want that grace time? And the answer was, oh, to be fitter. It's like, okay, why do you want to be fitter? And it was, I can't remember how many steps it was, but it took him a while to get through the barrier. The end result was when he kept on asking why time and time again, he got to the level of, because I want to be a great dad. And he then connected that to something much deeper. So when he was, and actually went one level deeper, it was like, because I don't want to make the same mistakes that my father made with me. And like at that
Mm.
point, the emotional pull is a
Mm.
completely different level
Yes.
to, I want to hit a great, like what's more important. I want to be
Yeah.
the best example of a father possible to my kids and kind of set them up for success and set them up for contentment and happiness. Or
Mm.
I want to do 30 clean and jerks in less than 2 minutes. It's like, what's the obvious pull there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
eventually we managed to really establish like that as his prime driver. And when he did get
yeah.
that, it didn't make things easier, but it made them less difficult. It
Mm.
became less of a choice in those moments where he could either pull away from discomfort or go towards it, or whether he could be consistent or not. The choice wasn't as nebulous. It was kind of a clearer option for him.
Yeah. It's so interesting that the conscious goal was pretty clear. And it took some digging to find the subconscious reason that those things were important, but they were still there.
It took some like, yeah, there's always that connection, but it wasn't
Yeah.
explicit.
Yes. And it was there, but because it wasn't explicit, it wasn't accessible. So you have to do
Yes,
that work to get there.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you, like, most people listening to this won't have access to a coach or someone that they can really have that depth of conversation with, and someone who will
Mm.
sit there for for hours, essentially, that it took me through different training sessions to get to that point. But what we do have is a journal and a pen, and
Yeah.
we can sit there and just write why and write why and write why and do it up to 7 times, and we'll find something pretty important at the heart of that, something that's truly motivating.
Mm. Absolutely. And let's remind ourselves that those do have to be honest answers. They
Yes.
can't just
Yeah.
look good, because sometimes what we'll discover is the reason that I want a six pack is because I think it'll make me worthy of a job that I want.
Mm,
And sometimes that's actually something to let go of.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
One question that I like to bring out in my journaling practice is something
Mhm.
along the lines of, would I continue to do this even if no one's watching, or even if no one could see?
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
for me is like, shows me what is truly connected to my purpose.
Mm. Yes. Very clarifying.
Mm, yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. It kind of, it shows you what is inherently valuable, what's intrinsically motivating to you.
Mm. Yeah. What gives you meaning just in
Yeah.
and of itself?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this can apply to all different areas of our lives too. It can apply
For sure.
to training, obviously, but we can apply it to everything that we do, to our work, to our relationships, to our mental
Yeah.
health and happiness,
Mhm.
to how we spend our free time. There's
Yeah.
everything in there.
100% everything.
Mhm. Are there any other ways that we can make this applicable, Rachel, or actionable? Any journaling prompts that
Mm.
you think are worthwhile explaining here?
Mm. I love the ask why 7 times. And I like the clarifying, kind of almost a thought experiment of, if nobody was watching,
Mm,
would you still be doing this? I think you're going to find the information that you need if you can answer those questions honestly.
yeah. And it's not going to take 5 minutes. It's probably closer to 5 hours total
10.
work. Yeah. It's a little bit of extra work. Right then.
Yes,
I think that's a good place to wrap up.
me too.